Okay, so let's get going with the panel discussion. Up here we have Johan Lindfors from Microsoft, Dan Berg Jonsson from OmegaPoint, a colleague of mine actually, Dave Wickers from OWASP and AppSec Security, and Pravir Chandra from 45 Software. But we also have a fifth chair, and we would like anyone that would like to be on the panel, because this is the Open Web Application Security Project. So who wants to join us? Okay, we got the first one. When you start feeling exhausted, you can leave this chair to anyone else. No, you're here for good. So you can introduce yourself.
Oh, yeah, no problem. My name is Justin Searle, and I am the founder, one of the co-leads of Samurai WTF.
So you've been given training here before. So, okay, we have the question, is application security a losing battle? And you might have seen in your conference guides that we actually have an interview with Jeff Williams, who's the chair of OWASP. And I asked him this question, and he had some quite interesting answers. So we'll see if the panel agrees with Jeff. Otherwise, they can take the discussion when they get back home to the US. So I'll start, and you got the microphones, and when you feel you want to say something, either you have it already, or you need to request it from someone else on the panel. So we'll just start with the easy question. Are we failing with getting the word out about application security, reaching out to developers? You need to develop secure code.
In that case, I would like to call for evidence A. The OWASP 2007 list compared to the OWASP 2010 list. And on both lists, we have the same top two issues. We are failing. If we do not solve the two top issues in 3 years, then my prognosis is that we won't do so the next 3 years, unless something happens.
I could have put it lower on the list, but I don't think you would have either. Right? Yeah, I mean, we're clearly failing. And I've been talking to Microsoft, and I've been talking to Google today, and a number of places, and I think OWASP is preaching to the choir, but I think what we need to do is take the opportunity to preach to the audience who's really producing all this stuff for more. So that's in terms of outreach, which is a big mission at OWASP. The other thing I think, of course, OWASP loves to do, and we've had some minor victories, is getting things fixed in the one place where it fixes it for the entire world. So we have maybe caused a couple of browser updates to be changed. We're causing a few changes to be made in the Java language. But we'd like to have the opportunity to do that with .NET, with all the browsers, and also I would like to be able to do that in a lot of the big UI components, so we can squash XSS and like struts and Spring, for example, so you just can't introduce them in there, or at least make it much, much less likely. And I think if OWASP can reach to the communities who own those technologies, whether it's Mozilla or a big commercial vendor, I think we can make a big impact. Because I'd rather fix it in one place than teach 10 million guys how to avoid it. That's always been my style. Now, that might put me out of business as a consultant, but I'm not afraid of that. So I'm perfectly willing to take that chance.
I think my opinion on it would be, is this not on?
Yeah, that's for the filming.
What?
That's for filming, and this is for the audience.
Oh, I
You're
get
on
it.
both.
Check. So I think my answer to this question would be kind of dependent on the definition of we. So is the we as in like, is OWASP like, or the mission of OWASP failing, or we as the application security community, or we as just software development community? And I think the answer varies depending on which one of those we's you define. I think as the software development industry, or just software development in general, I don't think we're failing, actually. I'm going to go ahead and disagree. And the reason I don't think we're failing is because, there hasn't been catastrophic consequences. We've held the line, right? And you can argue whether or not we've held the line well or poorly. But as far as catastrophic consequences and breaches and things of that nature related to application security, I don't think we have, we've really dropped the ball, so to speak, right? I think a lot of organizations that are very risk averse, that are very concerned about it, have actually over the course of the last 5 to 10 years spun up pretty significant application security programs. They've actually done a lot to prevent their own risk. So I think that part's okay. Now, we as OWASP, are we succeeding or failing? That depends on what the goals are, or how you view the goals. And I think in that respect, if you view the goals as, like Dave does, as pushing it in and actually getting things to change and fixing the root causes of the problems, I don't know that we're really succeeding. I don't know if I would say we're failing, but I don't know that we're succeeding either. But as far as at least promoting awareness and things of that nature, I think we are succeeding as OWASP. And I think the evidence of that is if you go back 4 years ago, there were 2 conferences. There was one in the US, there was one in Europe, right? And now this year, how many are there? 10 this year, and last year there was like a dozen. Not to mention one-day-long regional events that are happening all over the place all the time. And so I think in that regard, as far as getting the message out there about AppSec, we're doing pretty good.
Yeah, I would also agree that we're not failing. Not only have we haven't seen any large catastrophic failures, but you stop and think about over the last 3 to 5 years, how many new websites have come up and not just doubled, not just tripled, but by factors of 10 increase the functionality and of their applications that are out there. We would have seen catastrophic failures with all that new functionality being released if we weren't making a dent and making some progress. Of course, the number of compromises, the number of exploits, the volume of vulnerabilities coming out in new research is growing. But look what's happening in the technologies that we're dealing with. I mean, they're growing just as fast. So I think we're succeeding in the fact that we're growing probably in stride with the technology advancements in web application technology itself. But I think that's a sign that we're actually succeeding, just maybe not as fast as we all hope.
On the issue of hope, I would say that I think there is hope. I think we might perhaps be failing at the moment, or at least historically. There is a barrier between the security people and the developers. And that's a problem. We're talking about application security, not firewall security, etc., because then it's just a small portion of programs. Now we're talking about every single program in the world. You need to know about this stuff. But I think there's a hope, and I think the key for success is how we treat the agile movement. Because what agile movement does is that it tears down pre-work and after work and say that should be done consistently, continuously within every single iteration. Even stuff like performance load testing. So if we can pull security out of this, make a big security policy at the start and then make a big security review at the end, and push it into every single iteration, I think if we can leverage the agile movement, we can get security onto the agenda of the everyday programmer.
Yeah, I think that's actually a great comment. It's something I haven't heard before, or a suggestion I haven't heard about security trying to push and promote agile development. Because if you stop and think about security and the number of vulnerabilities that are found and how often these organizations need to patch these holes that we're finding, organizations that are running agile programs are going to be much more responsive at trying to fix the holes that we're finding.
Yeah, so we meet like tens of thousands of developers each year with different types of events and channels and type of resources. But I'm a bit surprised that the interest in security, when we talk about security as a topic for a seminar or a discussion, is so low from the overall community. So that is why I think we might be failing in getting the overall developer might grow being interested in the area of security, and especially proactive instead of just reactive and just patching or fixing something that already has been false. So what we are succeeding though as a developer community is talking about architecture and patterns, and I think agile and domain-driven design and such is succeeding and also growing the interest. So if we can inject the security messages into those types of discussions, I think that is one way to raise the awareness and also the overall competence of the developer community as a whole. And that will naturally lower also the risks and vectors that we feel back in that is something I really like to talk more about moving forward.
Actually, I think the everyday programmer is a little bit scared of security. I'm sitting here, I'm coding, I'm just doing as good as I can. And then come these guys with their black hats or white hats, and they're doing some really nasty stuff. And so I think actually we've got an attitude problem that if a programmer starts getting a little bit interested in security, they dare not say so, because then suddenly they are security experts and they are only allowed to write perfect code, and if someone finds an exploit in their code, they're fried. And I think historically, I've seen this in the program community, that there's a little bit of a barrier that perhaps we on the security side have made an oversell, saying security is so important, you have to be an expert, we have experts and people do not dare to be just an ordinary day expert with a little bit of knowledge of security, same as I know a little bit of domain-driven design, a little bit of this, a little bit of that.
I don't know that I would agree necessarily with the statement that your average everyday developer is really scared of security per se, but I mean, I've never, well, not to say now, I've met a lot of people in development communities, but the average case, I think, for a developer is that no developer that's out there that's building software really wants to build software that sucks, right? Like, and it's an awareness issue more often than not, at least in my experience, that once you sort of talk to someone, explain to them what it takes to actually build something, build something well, build something robustly, they want to do that naturally. But I think that, the factor that runs opposite that is that the manager of that dev team doesn't give a damn, right? They're under schedule pressures, they're under budget pressures, they have to deliver features within a certain time frame. So I do agree to an extent as security guys, we may be oversold it, but I think the way in which we've oversold it is that you've got to do all these 15,000 different things in order to produce secure software, and you get laughed out of the room of every budget meeting, right? Because it's like, okay, we're not doing the 15,000 things, so just come back later when you're sane, right? And so I think that's the factor that we need to account for. So as security guys, we need to figure out a way to get our message in to actually put appropriate security controls in the right places that are affordable, that actually make a difference and impact the situation, and still keep the seesaw balanced in terms of how much you're spending on security and how much risk you're accepting. And so that's sort of the way I view it.
So I'm going to take this as a quick opportunity to do a commercial on the OWASP ES API project. So we recognize that this is a ridiculously complicated problem. No developer can deal with 10,000 issues. It's just too complicated. And then you talked about Agile, and Agile developers are going so fast that they can't pause and do security all the time, and they can't build the 10,000 things in there either, because they just don't have time. So one of the things that OWASP has been pushing is since you can't get the languages to fix them and the browsers to fix them, well, let's at least build standard security controls that developers can use so they can solve a problem with something that has 3 things to deal with, not 30 things to deal with, right? And again, the SAPI is not a panacea, it's not going to solve the world's problems, but if you guys are not familiar with the OWASP Enterprise Security API project, which is ES API, I would certainly encourage you to get familiar with it, because its goal is to build a library of standard security controls that if you learn how to use those controls, then you reduce the problem set maybe by 5x or 10x from the whole problem and having to build it all yourself. So have standard controls that you use. And of course, SAPI is not just a drop-in kind of thing. You have to tailor it for your organization. You tweak it. You take the best parts out of it. You keep the parts you already got, etc. But getting standard controls into the developer's hands enables them to succeed. And I think that's one of our biggest failures. I teach constantly. I do like 20 classes a year. And the developers walking out of there all glassy eyed, oh my God, I can't possibly deal with this stuff. So we as organizations who own developers have to enable them to succeed. And education is helpful, of course, and it's a first requirement. But if we don't give them the tools to succeed, they just can't do it. I mean, even if they know how to do all this stuff, they don't have enough time to do it, even if they know how to do it right. It's just impossible.
Okay, I think we should move on. We'll just do a slight twist of this issue. But SAPI, the project is referenced in the conference guide, so you'll find a short description of it and where to find it. So that's great. We got the reference here. My next